September 9th, 1994. It was truly a sight to behold as a 6'8" behemoth weighing over 600 pounds entered the octagon for the UFC's third show. The Charlotte, North Carolina crowd was not quite sure how to react. Some were cheering, but many were staring, not in awe or fear, but in utter disbelief.
Can you guys feel the spirit here in North Carolina? No knock on Denver, but there is a real electricity here.
And he moved slowly, each step sending subtle tremors through the cage floor. Dressed in a white t-shirt and oversized white gi pants, he didn't look like a fighter. He looked like a mountain. The cage door slammed shut, and what happened next became one of the most outlandish and unforgettable moments in MMA history.
I'm Emmanuel Yarbrough. Anybody hoping to win tonight has to come through me.
The fight was a climax of a lifelong struggle for Emmanuel Yarbrough.
Please welcome 6'8", 618-pound Emmanuel Yarbrough.
The heaviest fighter in UFC history and a Guinness World Record holder for his weight as an athlete, Emmanuel Yarbrough defied every expectation, but not in the way most people think. From the outside, he looked like a man defined by his size. At 14 years old, he already weighed over 320 pounds. Most people saw someone too big to be an athlete, but Emmanuel had goals that went far beyond what they expected. He wasn't just overweight, he was overlooked, misunderstood, and misjudged. But this is not a story about failure. It's about a man who refused to be defined by his body, even when it seemed to define everything. Before we understand how Emmanuel Yarbrough became the fattest fighter in UFC history, we have to go back, long before the cage, the crowd, or the headlines. Back to the early years of a boy born in Rahway, New Jersey. Emmanuel Yarbrough was always big. He was an overweight child in a working-class family that came with its own emotional burdens. Growing up in Rahway was not easy as money was tight and stress was high. His mother, Rosie, worked tirelessly to keep the family afloat, and Emmanuel, from the very beginning, felt the weight of more than just his body. You see, he was overweight for as long as he could remember. He was too big for school desks, too heavy for regular clothes, too different to blend in. He couldn't fit in if he tried. By the time he reached his teens, Emmanuel was already tipping the scales at over 320 pounds. Growing up in a working-class home, healthy food wasn't always accessible or affordable. Fast food and fried meals weren't just convenient, they were what the family could afford, and often what brought comfort during hard times. Emmanuel never developed healthy eating habits, and without much physical activity, the weight kept piling on. With every pound, the world seemed to have fewer places that fit him, literally and emotionally. Like so many kids who feel different, Emmanuel didn't just want to fit into clothes, he wanted to fit in. I never knew what it felt like to be a normal-sized person. That wasn't just a reflection, it was a quiet ache, a truth Emmanuel carried with him every time he walked into a room, sat at a desk, or looked in a mirror. And yet, he never folded. Despite everything, the bullying, the isolation, the discomfort of living in a world that seemed too small for him, Emmanuel remained kind and joyful, which is something that many going through what he did would have lost. He was soft-spoken, good-natured, and quick to laugh. Even so, he craved connection. That craving wasn't just a passing desire, it was everything that he hoped for. And though it didn't come easily, one unexpected opportunity would change everything. When football season rolled around, he showed up to tryouts. No invite, no expectations, just a quiet determination to prove he belonged. Football was the opportunity he didn't know he needed. For once, his size wasn't a problem, it was the reason he got picked. The football field didn't ask him to shrink or disappear, it asked him to show up and be himself. And Emmanuel showed up with everything he had. Emmanuel's outlook on life started to shift at Howard Park. The local field where he first suited up and started knocking defenders off their feet. For the first time in his life, people weren't staring because he was different, they were watching because he was dominant. Trying to stop Emmanuel was like trying to stop a freight train. You could see it coming, but but there wasn't much you could do about it. The neighborhood started to take notice. Emanuel became something of a local legend. People would show up just to see the big man play. It was the first time Yarbrough felt like the world was meeting him on his terms. By high school, his reputation had grown so much that, according to local lore, his team had to special order a uniform and helmet from the New York Giants because no standard gear could handle his size. For the first time in his life, on that field, he wasn't an outcast. But football wasn't the only place Emanuel found purpose. There was another arena that called to him, one with fewer cheers and more grit, a place where it was just you, your opponent, and the mat. That sport was wrestling. Emanuel threw himself into it with the same determination he brought to the football field, but this was different. It wasn't about blocking or team plays. It was about dominance, technique, and raw, one-on-one intensity. On the mat, Emanuel was a nightmare. His size and strength allowed him to simply ragdoll his opposition with ease. Opposing schools wouldn't even send anyone out to face him. They'd just forfeit. Emanuel was too big, too strong. For the first time, Emanuel felt like he belonged somewhere. The field, the mat, they didn't care about how he looked. They cared about what he could do. At Middlesex County College, he earned All-American honors in wrestling. He transferred to Morgan State University, where he played Division I football in 1982 and 1983, then returned to the mat, earning NCAA Division II All-American status in both 1983 and 1985, just before the school made the leap to Division I. His size, once a source of shame, had become his edge. Through athletic success, Emanuel had found direction, validation, and most importantly, a sense of pride. But when college ended, so did that path. The NFL wasn't built for someone his size, and wrestling didn't offer a professional future. For the first time in years, Emanuel felt stuck. The same body that opened doors was now closing them. He still craved the grind. He still needed a reason to compete. The path forward wasn't obvious. The sports world didn't make room for someone like him. Just when Emanuel was about to lose hope in his future as an athlete, that's when he found it. His next chapter. A chapter that would not only reignite his drive, but define the rest of his life. It wasn't another team sport. It wasn't about size alone. It was about precision, leverage, and discipline. It was judo. And in judo, size alone wasn't enough. For the first time, Emanuel had to refine his movement, learn technique, be deliberate. That challenge lit a fire in him. Yarbrough first began training judo under renowned coach Yoshisada Yonezuka and quickly proved that his size could still be an asset, earning a silver medal at the U.S. Nationals at the brown belt level. It was through judo that he found a renewed sense of purpose, and it opened the door to something even bigger, sumo wrestling.
I love sumo.
Yep.
I started out in judo, and the judo led to the sumo.
A sport where size wasn't just accepted, it was celebrated. And for a man like Emmanuel Yarbrough, that changed everything. While Emanuel was undeniably a mountain of a man with tremendous power, these sports asked for something more. Coming from football and wrestling, where size often dictated outcomes, he relished the challenge of mastering leverage, timing, and balance. For Yarbrough, it wasn't just about his size, it was about learning how to not rely on it. Emanuel started competing in amateur sumo in 1992, and it didn't take long for the world to take notice. He was a natural at the sport, a juggernaut with raw power, surprising balance, and a relentless drive to improve. In just a few years in the sport, he claimed silver medals at the Sudo World Championships in both 1992 and 1994, and added a bronze in 1993. These weren't small-time tournaments. These were elite international events held in Japan, the spiritual home of sumo. Many of his opponents had trained their entire lives in Japan, and here was an American defying expectations, dominating on foreign soil in a sport steeped in centuries of tradition. Despite his success, Emanuel had no idea how far martial arts would take him. His journey was just getting started. It wouldn't take long before a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity came knocking. This opportunity would put him on the biggest stage he'd ever been on and change his life forever. Before it became a billion-dollar empire, the UFC was a freak show instead of a legitimate sport. It wasn't polished, it wasn't professional. It was raw, chaotic, completely unpredictable, and people loved it.
There are no rules, no judges' scores, and no time limits.
At the time, mixed martial arts was more spectacle than sport, and fight promoters were constantly searching for fighters who could shock audiences and blur the lines between martial arts and mayhem. When matchmakers caught wind of Yarbrough, they saw an opportunity. Promoters didn't see a gifted athlete in Emmanuel. What they saw was a draw and someone who would bring more eyes to their organization. When the Ultimate Fighting Championship came calling in 1994, Emmanuel said yes. He had proven himself in the sumo world. Now he would face his toughest test yet in a sport where sheer size could only take you so far. And that's where his story would take its most unforgettable turn. The promotional material the UFC aired ahead of Yarbrough's debut leaned heavily into one thing, branding him as the world's largest athlete.
Meet the proverbial immovable object, Emmanuel Yarbrough. At 6'8" and 616 pounds, he is the largest professional combat athlete in the world.
As Yarbrough made his walk to the cage, the spectacle was already underway. At the time, the UFC octagon didn't have stairs, so he took a deep breath, lifted his leg, and nearly stumbled climbing in, hoisting all 616 pounds of himself into the cage and pushing his mobility to the limit before the fight had even begun. The face-off between Yarbrough and his opponent, Keith Hackney, told the whole story. It was the most lopsided size mismatch in UFC history. The fight didn't last long, but while it did, it was pure chaos.
And through the other gate. The gates are broken open. That's the first time that has happened.
That's a big deal. He's such a big man.
Low leg.
Think he can get any leverage?
It's all Keith Hackney. Emmanuel's just covering up. Keep in mind, the corner can stop it with the towel. The referee can stop it. Keith desperately trying to take out Emmanuel. He doesn't have any chokeholds, man. It's obvious. He doesn't have any chokeholds.
He's trying to wear him down. He's trying to wear him down. Emmanuel.
He just gave it. Emmanuel just tapped out.
Yarbrough's UFC debut came to an end after just 1 minute and 59 seconds. While the crowd in Charlotte, North Carolina was thoroughly entertained, Yarbrough was left devastated. He earned just $1,000 for his efforts, a petty amount for his struggles.
It's absolutely incredible the way you sat there, you were taking it, and it was just almost like you couldn't get up.
That was part of the strategy, was to take some abuse, but you can only go but so far.
But the loss didn't break him. It ignited something deeper. Refusing to let the setback define him, Yarbrough returned to sumo wrestling with renewed focus and intensity. In 1995, his dedication paid off. Yarbrough achieved what few non-Japanese competitors ever had. He became the World Amateur Sumo Champion. For a moment, it felt like the world had finally made space for someone like him. He wasn't being stared at. He was being cheered. He wasn't an outcast. He was a champion. And yet, the spotlight that came with his size never went away. Riding the wave of attention he was receiving, Yarbrough returned to MMA competition.
International Amateur Sumo Champion from the USA, Mr. Emmanuel Yarbrough!
In April 1998, he entered the Japanese judo organization and secured his only MMA win, quite literally engulfing Tatsuo Nakano with his body in under 2 minutes. Two months later, Yarbrough stepped into the ring once more, this time at Pride 3, one of Japan's premier MMA events. He faced Daiju Takase, a young, undersized opponent who would one day defeat all-time great Anderson Silva. The fight against Yarbrough was the 169-pound Fattest MMA debut. Yet again, Yarbrough found himself beaten by the smaller man.
Like this, look at him. Well, Emmanuel, you should hit him. Bleeding. You should hit him in the face. He's bleeding. Emmanuel Yarbrough gets on. No, get out! Get out! Hey. Oh my God! Hey. Oh my God! He tapped out. Unbelievable! Whoa.
This was the last time we would ever see Yarbrough fight in MMA. Yarbrough's MMA journey had been short and brutal. He didn't win fans over with flawless technique or highlight reel finishes, but even though the cage hadn't been kind to him, the world of sumo and Japanese society treated him like something rare, a champion. Following his Sumo World Championship, Emanuel became one of the most recognizable sumo wrestlers outside of Japan. Interviews, TV appearances, magazine spreads. The world was watching.
He's big. Emmanuel Tiny Yarbrough. Emmanuel, come on in with the top billing.
If you laugh, does that mean I win?
His return to Japan for MMA appearances was met with enthusiasm, not because of his record, but because of who he was. While his MMA losses stung, they didn't erase what he meant to fans. Still, underneath the surface, a new battle was starting. At this point, Yarbrough's weight wasn't an athletic asset. It was a growing liability. What once made him unique was now threatening his life. After his UFC debut, Yarbrough's weight began to skyrocket, eventually reaching 828 pounds. The incentive to keep gaining weight in sumo, combined with a diet heavy in fried food and fast food, pushed his body to dangerous extremes. And while that number would earn him the Guinness World Record for the heaviest living athlete, it was also the beginning of a much more serious fight. A fight for his health.
If this is not controlled and his weight is not reduced dramatically, the pressure on the heart, it's going to kill him.
The reality of weighing nearly half a ton was nothing close to glorious. Yarbrough would sometimes need to stop and catch his breath after just a short walk. His joints and knees groaned under the pressure of his massive body. In interviews, Yarbrough spoke candidly about these challenges.
If I just tried to get on with one seat, then they would have an argument, but this is an instance I had 3 seats paid for. So that's what mystifies me even more. I don't understand, like, even at 700 pounds, if you spread 700 pounds over 3 seats, this more than accommodates it. So I really don't know, like, what the problem was or what the problem is.
Yarbrough's manager revealed that Yarbrough used to tell him, "I am a prisoner in my own body," highlighting his lifelong battle with food addiction and weight. By the 2000s, Yarbrough's health issues were impossible to ignore. Dangerously high blood pressure fueled concerns from doctors.
This kind of weight is a tremendous pressure on your heart and your lungs and the rest of your body, as well as your hip and your knees. Now is the time to lose the weight.
And in 2007, Yarbrough was hospitalized for congestive heart failure for a week. At just 42 years old, he found himself in the fight for his life outside the ring. "I was sick and tired of being sick and tired." Yarbrough admitted frankly, describing the breaking point that his health crisis had brought him to. His stint in the hospital was a sobering wake-up call for Yarbrough.
If you put yourself schedule every day, and if you follow, you can. If you don't follow, of course it's not going to work.
If I could, I want to adopt you as my father.
I got to think about that.
He needed to make drastic changes to his health, for if he didn't, he wouldn't live to see much more of his 40s. Yarbrough began making changes as he aspired to dramatically improve his health. While his health was his #1 concern, deep down, Yarbrough hungered for a return to competition, and that was his long-term goal. Under a doctor's supervision, he undertook a weight loss regimen with the goal of losing over 200 pounds. It was an immense goal for most, but a man weighing over 750 pounds, nothing else was an option. He wanted to reclaim the mobility he had had before and wanted to feel the thrill of competition again. In his first week of his weight loss journey, Yarbrough lost an incredible 26 pounds. The weight peeled off of him And as the weeks turned into months, Yarbrough had lost a reported 130 pounds. The cautious optimism his doctors maintained about his weight loss fueled Yarbrough's athletic hopes. Riding a wave of momentum, Yarbrough began speaking publicly about his ambitious athletic goals. He hoped to compete in the next Sumo World Championship.
Sumo Championships are going to be held later on this year. So actually, I have like a 5-month time frame to be prepared for the national championships.
And even had his sights set on the U.S. Olympic judo trials once he reached fighting weight. Yarbrough garnered attention for his weight loss, but this time in a much different light. Media coverage began to shift in tone, moving away from gawking at his size and instead applauding his hard-fought discipline and attempt to regain his health. One New Jersey headline read, "Ex-sumo wrestler winning Battle of the Bulge." It was shaping up to be a different kind of comeback story, not in the cage or the ring, but in the far more important arena of Yarbrough's well-being. The journey was anything but easy for Emmanuel. After the initial stretch of steady weight loss, his progress began to plateau. Every pound lost became a hard-earned victory. Unlike traditional sumo athletes who train for years and follow strict, intentional diets to build the mass required for competition, Yarbrough admitted that he never set out to become so heavy. His weight gain had been unplanned, the slow result of years spent eating fried foods and living a largely sedentary lifestyle.
In Japan, they follow a strict thing of like eating chokanabe, which is a sumo stew.
Sumo stew, what's in sumo stew?
It consists of fish, chicken, beef, mixed over rice, and they eat a big vat of it. And then after that, they follow it with a bunch of beers, and then they...
Do you eat that stew? What do you eat?
No, I follow the great American diet. Wendy's, McDonald's, Burger King.
Now in his 40s, he was forced to confront the deeply ingrained habits of a lifetime. It wasn't just his body that needed retraining, it was his mindset. Undoing decades of damage would prove to be the fight of his life. Progress was slow and not without setbacks. His knees and back were under constant strain, and even at 600 pounds, more than 200 pounds lighter than his heaviest weight, everyday movement remained a monumental task. Still, he pressed forward. The dream of one day competing again gave him purpose, and the knowledge that his life quite literally depended on change gave him motivation. By the end of 2007, Yarbrough had lost significant weight and rekindled something that had defined him long before fame: his unwavering determination. It was the same inner fire that made him an all-American collegiate wrestler, now redirected towards the most important match of his life: staying alive. While Yarbrough's MMA record stands at a paltry 1 win and 2 losses, his impact on the sport was much more powerful than his record. The image of Yarbrough in the octagon, towering over his opponents, struggling with mobility, and ultimately succumbing to fatigue, raised critical questions. Should a 600-pound man be fighting a 200-pound opponent, let alone even being allowed to compete? Bouts like Hackney versus Yarbrough forced officials to rethink the sport of MMA, leading to the introduction of weight classes and more stringent medical checks. Beyond the influence on rules and matchmaking, Yarbrough left behind something far more personal. Inside the MMA world, he was universally beloved. Outside of competition, he made an even deeper impression. He embraced his fame with warmth, appearing in movies, including a Bollywood comedy and HBO's Oz, and carried himself with the same humility that defined his entire journey.
You ever sucked cock before?
Back off, Clarence.
All right, Vern. No need to get testy.
Despite his renewed commitment to health, Emmanuel Yarbrough's body had already endured too much. Years of carrying upwards of 800 pounds had taken a toll that even his determination couldn't fully undo. While he continued to fight to get healthy, his body simply couldn't keep up with the demands of everyday life. In public, he remained upbeat, but in private, the battle grew more difficult. His weight fluctuated, and even with real effort and progress, the damage done to his heart, lungs, and joints proved irreversible. On December 21st, 2015, Emmanuel Yarbrough passed away from a heart attack. He was just 51 years old. The news hit the combat sports world hard. While his MMA record was short and his time in the spotlight brief, Yarbrough left a lasting impression, both as a physical marvel and a deeply human figure behind the spectacle. He wasn't just a fighter, he was a pioneer, a record holder, a champion, and a man who carried himself with grace, humility, and heart even as the world stared. His warmth disarmed critics, and his quiet dignity and sportsmanship made it impossible to reduce him to a spectacle. No matter how unconventional his appearance, Emmanuel Yarbrough was never a punchline because he never let himself be. His death marked the end of a life that was larger than most in every sense of the word, but his legacy remains. Emmanuel Yarbrough didn't just challenge his opponents, he challenged the sport itself. His fights forced MMA to confront uncomfortable truths about safety, fairness, and the limits of physical competition. In many ways, he helped spark the very conversation about weight classes, regulations, and what combat sports should stand for. He raised questions that are still relevant today. What's fair? What's safe? Where do we draw the line between sport and spectacle? His legacy isn't about belts or knockouts. It's about how he changed the way we think about size, about limits, and about what it really means to step into a fight. Emmanuel Yarbrough's story reminds us that the true essence of combat sports isn't just about wins and losses. It's about the courage to step into the arena no matter the odds. He showed that fighting spirit can come in many forms, even when the body becomes the biggest opponent. But what if a fighter entered the cage without something most athletes consider essential? If you thought size was the biggest hurdle a fighter could face, what if I told you our next story features a man who stepped into the cage without one of the tools most fighters take for granted? Not strength, not speed, but an appendage, and what he does without it, you have to see to believe. In our next episode, we explore the incredible stories of mixed martial artists who stepped into the cage despite severe physical challenges. Some fought with only one arm, and even one fighter competed without legs. They didn't ask for sympathy, they asked for a fight. Hit that subscribe button and join us next time, because in MMA, it's not about what you're born with, it's about what you're willing to fight for.
Get into. You just have to embrace the idea of going to battle.
I mean, what do you do now that keeps you busy? What makes you wake up in the morning and say, I want to get out there?
I'm a people's person to begin with, so anytime to go out and connect and PR with people is always a good thing to me. I like to get together and talk story and reminisce and whatever.